This is the Test Administrator Training module for Oregon Statewide Assessment System, required for all district and school test coordinators, as well as test administrators.
The Oregon Department of Education developed a guidance document in 2019 that replaces what used to be called our Best Practices Manual. The document is called the Right Assessment for the Right Purpose Guidance Document and is available on the assessment team's website within the Test Administration Resources section. The document provides definition for critical terms in our Oregon statewide assessment system and in other areas where Oregon students are assessed in terms of academic achievement, behavior, or other constructs as part of their instructional programs. The document also addresses current questions and appropriate uses and, perhaps just as importantly, misuses of statewide summative assessment data. It is critical that educators in Oregon use assessments for the purposes for which they are designed and have sufficient technical adequacy documentation. We also want to share that this document does not address any concerns outside of the K-12 student assessment context, nor does it provide the final word on assessment literacy in Oregon. It is published with the intended goal of beginning conversations about assessment literacy, which we know will evolve and increase in accuracy and complexity over time.
This training module is the first of the required modules for test administrators, which should be followed with the training modules that cover accessibility supports and test security. Additionally, TAs are required to review the modules for the specific assessments they will be administering. Each training module is intended to provide an overview of the major topics, as well as an orientation to the manuals and other resources available to support TAs before, during, and after testing. This training module includes an overview of the roles and responsibilities for test administrators, student participation in statewide assessments, testing environment requirements, and additional resources. The responsibilities of a test administrator are not limited to testing day. Preparation before testing should include providing students with an opportunity to become familiar with testing format, consulting all relevant documentation for identifying which students to test and which accessibility supports to provide, as well as making arrangements for students who are not testing, such as students who finish earlier than their peers during this testing session. During testing, it is the TA's responsibility to ensure that students receive the appropriate test and actively monitor students to maintain a secure testing environment. After testing, TAs can check participation reports to monitor student progress and completion of tests. The expected participation by grade level for each tested subject is shown on this slide. Please note that participation requirements are set by federal statute, and a 95% threshold is expected for subject areas, except the English Language Proficiency Assessment, or ELPA, where every student meeting the inclusion requirements is expected to participate. Locally developed testing schedules that adhere to the statewide assessment windows should guide TAs as to which assessments will be administered to which students and when. Consult the locally developed testing plans to ensure students are administered the right test at the right time. Prior to testing, TAs must be aware of which supports students will need, and that all preparations have been made to ensure those supports are available during testing. Awareness and planning in these areas contribute to increased student participation. Consult Section 6, Planning for Test Administration, in the TAM for more information. After the trained TA sets up the testing session and students begin testing, those students must be supervised by the TA until the end of the testing session. The testing environment must be quiet and void of distractions or educational materials posted on the walls, that might provide students with an advantage. Students may only have access to supports from the Oregon Accessibility Manual that are administered according to the rules set out in the manual. TAs need to limit their interaction with students to ensure consistency in testing environments across schools and districts. This includes reading the student directions verbatim, following the TAM and the OAM, and never coaching students. To facilitate this limited interaction during testing, it is best practice to prepare students before testing by explaining what will be allowed and what will not be allowed in the testing environment. A secure testing environment will be addressed in more depth in the test security training module. The Oregon Statewide Assessment System, or OSAS, portal is accessible to adult users by visiting osasportal.org. Students only use osasportal.org to access the sample tests. Announcements that impact the portal or testing are posted to the landing page, and anyone may register to receive automatic alerts for these announcements. A TA user account includes access to multiple components within the OSAS portal. The Test Information Distribution Engine, or TIDE, is used to view and edit student test settings as well as monitor testing progress. The TA interface is used to create a testing session to administer tests. The Online Reporting System, or ORS, is used to review performance reports. TA user accounts are granted by test coordinators after the completion of the annual required training and submission of a signed assurance of test security form. Please consult your locally developed processes and procedures for obtaining an OSAS portal user account for this current school year. Here is a screenshot of the options presented to a TA after selecting Test Administrator on the OSAS portal landing page. From this page, a TA may select Test Administration to set up a testing session, TIDE to edit student settings, the training site to build familiarity with the testing interface before administering an operational test, the online reports to view participation and performance results, resources to access user guides to voice packs, or the ALPA Braille data entry interface. This is a screenshot of the Reset Your Password page. As mentioned before, TA user accounts are granted by test coordinators after the completion of the annually required training. User accounts granted during a previous school year no longer exist. Once the test coordinator creates your account, TIDE sends you an activation email. This email contains a link that takes you to the Reset Your Password page in TIDE, where you can set up your password for logging into TIDE and other applicable AIR systems. This link expires 15 minutes after the email was sent. If you do not set up your password within 15 minutes, you need to request a new link. If you do not receive an activation email, check your spam folder. Emails are sent from az-do-not-reply@airast.org, so you may need to add this address to your contact list. You need to request a password reset in any of the following situations. You forgot your password. You didn't activate your account within 15 minutes of receiving the activation email. The TIDE administrator locked your account. To request a password reset, click either of the links included in the activation email, or go to the TIDE login page and click Forgot Your Password? The Reset Your Password: Find Account page appears. Enter your TIDE email address and click Submit. If you have already activated your account, your security question appears. Enter the response to the security question and click Submit. TIDE sends you an email containing a link to reset your password. If you have not yet activated your account, TIDE sends you an email containing a link to reset your password. TAs access the test delivery system through the OSAS portal. The student interface can only be accessed through the current year secure browser. The secure browser for all supported operating systems can be downloaded from the OSAS portal. The TA interface is accessed through the Test Administration option in the OSAS portal. The screenshot shown on this slide is an example of a sample test session. It is through this interface that a TA can view the session ID, which students need approval to begin testing in the session, those who have tests in progress, and which students have submitted a print request. The following slides will walk through setting up a testing session. To create a testing session, the TA selects Create and Manage Test Session. Then a list of available tests will automatically display. Click on the plus symbol to expand any test, see more detail, and locate the specific grade level and/or test that will be administered during the testing session. Only select the specific tests that are expected to be taken by students during the testing session to avoid students from accidentally starting the incorrect test. After the TA selects Start Session, the system will automatically generate a unique testing session ID that students will need in order to log in. The test session will remain open until ended by the TA or when the TA logs out. Once a session is ended, it may not be resumed and a new session must be started. Students may resume a paused test in any new test session as long as the applicable test is included in the session. For example, if a TA creates a test session for students on a Tuesday, to resume testing the next day, the TA will need to create a new test session for students to resume testing. Also, a new test session is needed for each new group of students if a TA is testing different groups of students on the same day. After a test session is set up and students log in, the TA must approve students before they will be able to begin testing. A TA may approve all students at once or one at a time. This final confirmation is an important step, as it is the last opportunity the TA has to ensure each student is beginning the correct test and that all settings are correct. The student settings may be accessed by clicking on the View or I symbol. This will open a new window where all settings can be viewed, and some may be changed. Please consult the proper documentation and the OAM when changing accessibility support settings for students. After a student begins a test, the options for addressing any errors are drastically reduced. Errors in test settings caught after a student begins a test may constitute an impropriety and result in invalidation of the student's test and loss of the student's testing opportunity. This slide shows the 5-step student login process, with screenshots of what the student will see at each step. Note in step 1 that each student will need the unique session ID. Also, student names must be typed in exactly how the name is entered in the system. After signing in, additional information, such as the student's birthday and school, will be displayed so that the student can confirm they are logging into their own account. Once confirmed, the student will be presented with a list of tests that they have access to. It is important to be aware that students will not be able to select a test if it was not included in the session, even if that student is eligible for that test. After the student selects the test, they will be shown the Waiting for Approval screen until the TA approves their test. After approval, the student will be shown one more confirmation screen that will include the test settings. This is the final opportunity for the student to ensure they have the correct test settings. As a note, for science and ELPA assessments, instead of the audio playback check page, students will see a sound and video playback check page that will ask them to verify they can view the sample video and hear its associated sound. Here are the reading requirements for test administrators. Finally, The links to the resources referenced on previous slides are provided here. This concludes the Test Administrator Training module.